Victims Unit. Today, the Argentinian death case. Have you been a victim? Let's cross live to Argentina, where a greeting between an Argentinian and Australian are taking place.
Hola, Zach, ¿cómo estás?
Hola, José. Bien, ¿vos?
Chilling. I'm not quite sure how I'd recover from that. So, here we saw what would appear to be a greeting between one man caught engaging another man with an outstretched hand or handshake to be received with a motion reflecting a hug or kiss. I'm joined here now with Christian, a leading expert in the field, to explain more.
Thanks again for having me, Tom. Now, the fundamental difference at play here is a difference of cultural schemas regarding greetings. Cultural schemas, in layman terms, are guides or social scripts based upon prior experiences and are processes of socialization. Cultural schemas dictate the manner of accomplishing speech acts. In this instance, the speech act is a greeting. Now, within an Argentinian context, the manner in which the speech act of greeting is played out is through a hug and a kiss. Now, this is where it gets really interesting, Tom. Within an Australian cultural schema, kissing as a form of greeting is relegated only to close family members and friends, and is rarely seen as an acceptable form of greeting with those who are not familiar with. Now, Tom, as you can expect, this has resulted in an excruciating intercultural mishap. According to the Argentinian cultural schema, the businessman assumes that the Australian business partner will follow the appropriate cultural scripts and act out the hug and kiss. However, when the Australian businessman is not familiar with the Argentinian cultural procedure and thus attempts to use his own cultural schema within a foreign context, the result, as you can see, can only be described as a car crash.
Next up, we cross to an Argentine office in which an interaction is occurring between an Argentinian client and an Australian customer service representative. And I should warn you viewers, this footage is graphic.
Hola. Hola, ¿cómo andas vos?
I did run you. So what we saw here was an engagement in which a naive Australian customer service representative addresses an Argentinian client with an informal personal pronoun, which was highly unexpected, ensuing a severe case of confusion. Christian, how can we make sense of this?
Well, Tom, honorifics are used to convey respect or honour to an addressee. The power dynamic determines the pronouns or address used between the interactants. All sociolinguistic systems provide some means of expressing respect or disrespect, but only some systems have specifically conventionalized forms. This is evident in Argentina, which speaks a variety of the Spanish, which utilizes pronouns of address that are symbolic of a power dynamic or difference in the forms of usted, which is formal, and vos or tú, informal. What is interesting here, Tom, is that Argentina has two unique forms of informal personal pronouns. Now, Tom, what does this mean in terms of an Australian interacting within an Argentinian context? It means that the Australian speaker is likely to experience a breakdown in communication with the Argentine, as they are habituated to speaking a variety of English that even in its most cultivated form does not include dialectic morphology specifically designed to address someone in terms of status. What's more, Argentinian culture has traditionally revolved around the notion of monarchy and royalty. The formal term usted actually derived from the term Fustera Merced. I'm not quite sure if that's how you pronounce it, Tom, which literally translates to your mercy. By comparison, Australia is a relatively young country with less historical narratives and context from which honorific terms may stem. Now, Tom, we can relate that back to Hofstede's model, which proves that overall Australians are slightly less accepting of power distance than Argentinians. That is, Argentinians are more inclined to align themselves with authority figures and institutions of power than Australians are. And in this recognition of acknowledgement of power is certainly evident in the use of particular honorific pronouns.
Christian, I'm afraid that just about wraps us up for another episode of Intercultural Victims Unit. Join us next week when we discuss what not to say at a Japanese restaurant. I'm Tom Reed. Hooroo.